with the war years, the courses, the university course had closed, and I couldn't do any more subjects, so I worked in an architect's office for a couple of years, which I loved being there. It was very good. And actually, it's a splendid idea, in fact, to work in an office like that halfway through your course. It gives you a great amount of information and practice, and it was most enjoyable. I must have still been doing a couple of night classes, I think, and I did meet John then. He was just out of the army, and actually it was just before the war finished, but a lot of students were being repatriated at that stage and helped to start their training again. And he'd been in New Guinea and the Middle East for 3 years. When I told John that I was going over to London, we might be there for quite a while, he said, "Oh, well, I'm going too." So he managed to get himself a berth, which was very difficult in that time because it was been a boat that was used, I think, as a troop ship. They stopped at India and picked up a lot of the wives from India was then getting its independence, and the Davis Cup tennis team was on board, and they all had to move into the hold and sleep in hammocks. A very different life. And then he arrived in London before I did and told everybody that I'd chased him over. Yes, so we had a very good time in England. I think it was 6-7 months, and John worked in London, and I went around with my mother and took her lots of places sightseeing, and I did apply for a job and I nearly took it, but then I felt I really had another role to play. But then John and I went to Sweden for a marvellous holiday, looking at all the modernist buildings there. And that was an absolute eye-opener. It was so impressive. Living in war-torn London, which bombed out sites all over the place, and lack of food and lots of cabbage and dreadful things to eat. We went to Sweden and it was all so sort of fresh and clean and unaffected by the war, and a lot of the new buildings had such a sort of simple interiors and modest way of living that it really impressed us greatly. When we came back to Melbourne, we both enrolled in the university degree course, which had opened again, and we had to do 2 years to finish because some subjects weren't right that we'd already done, but we did that. And then after we graduated, we married immediately afterwards and started our practice. And that was the time that the ex-servicemen were all trying to get houses and borrowing their £2,750, which enabled you to build a house. You weren't allowed to build more than 10 squares. And if you put a veranda on, that had to count at half the space, half the area. So it was very hard to design a house for a family of that size and with that amount of money, but quite hard, quite difficult. And there couldn't be any overruns. No, it just had to be done for the amount of money they had, and that was that. And I think we did about somewhere around 30 of those little houses in the first 5 years, up to 1955. Most of them have gone, or they've been renovated and added to beyond recognition, or just a few are still there, but in good order, I'm pleased to say.